Hey now, I thought I would share my American mini barn find. Now I realize it's not the typical barn find that I read about in Mini World magazine or Mini magazine, in that, where a shell is found in a barn somewhere, or the last one I think I read was they literally found the mini under a pile of hay. This is not exactly the same, but it's still a barn find by my standards that I'm excited about, in that it was tucked away, kind of hidden, not being used for however many years. And so there's a little bit of history here. My history is that I lived in Georgia 22 years ago, and when I lived there, there was a house right around the corner that every once in a while they would have a Mini in their front yard or some other car. Well, because I was so, even then, I've always wanted a Mini, so I went over to meet whoever lived there. I knocked on their door, and nobody was home. So I was kind of bummed. I didn't get to meet whoever lived there, but there was a Mini there, and I looked it over. But then I went on my way. Shortly after that, we moved out of state. We moved here to Texas, and I've always had a little regret of not meeting whoever lived there. Well, it just so happens that my family and I went back to Georgia for Christmas this past year, and on New Year's Eve, 2017, I was kind of bored, and I was determined. I said, you know what? I'm going to go by those people's home, and I'm going to see if they're there. Now, we drove by at a dare show before. They didn't have a Mini in the yard, but they did have this cute little French car, yellow, with Christmas lights all over it. So I got my brother-in-law, and we went over to meet whoever lived there. We pulled up, and luckily enough for us, there was a couple in the front yard chopping down a tree. We felt kind of bad for interrupting their work, but I explained my story to them, how I tried to meet them 20 some odd years earlier. And anyhow, wonderful, really nice couple. And they said, well, hey, come around here. We've got some cars. We'll show you. And so we went around to the back side of their house, and they had all these cool little French cars. And they were showing us the engines, the body, and little cute features about them. They had a 1959 London cab, and he turned the meter on. The meter was still ticking. Everything looks like it worked well. And they said, well, hey, come back here. We have some other cars we can show you. And about, I don't know, 30 yards behind their house, they had a shop. In that shop, they had 42 classic cars. They had a few around and back of the shop too, but they had 42 classic cars inside that shop, and they were all different stages. Some were like this guy, or a lot of them were like this guy, just kind of sitting dry stored for years and years, and some of them were mint condition, restored, and some of them were in a process of being restored. And it was so fascinating to hear the couples. Now, to hear their stories. The neat thing was that she was just as excited about the cars as he was. So it was fun to hear her side of the story on the car restoration or the parades that they were in than it was his story as well, his side of the story as well. So that was kind of neat. To see that both of them were so interested in the cars. So we're going through, and they're telling us stories about each and every car. And through one of the piles, I see a taillight. I knew exactly what that taillight was. And so I was anxious, of course, not wanting to be rude. I was anxious to get up there and look around the bend to see what the Mini was. And we're listening to stories, and finally we get up there, and sure enough, this guy was sitting there. Because I wasn't rude, I really didn't get to ask any questions, and they kind of brushed over it like, it was of no interest. Well, I managed to get 3 shots of it, 3 pictures. It was kind of dark. They didn't come out all that great, and then I could only look at it as I was walking by it, so I really couldn't look it over. So we go on, we finish the tour, we finish seeing all their beautiful cars, Model T Fords, they had a mint condition Austin 7, I think that was his favorite. They had bug-eyed Sprites, MGs, they had a beautiful 3, little mini BMW Q, I don't know what it was called, but 300 something BMW. That was really where the front door opens in the front, or the whole front of the car opens. Anyhow, so here we are. We go through this tour. The next thing we know, we find ourselves back in the yard, and we're saying, "Hey, so glad to meet you. Happy New Year's to you." And right before we leave, he says, "Oh, hey, hold on a minute," and he walks off. So we end up talking to his wife a little bit further, and she's telling some other stories. And he comes back, and he hands us each a piece of paper. He says, "Hey, if you know anybody that wants to buy an old car, send them my way. I don't want to sell many of them, but I do want to." And Susie said that. Boy, I scanned the list, and sure enough, right at the very bottom, and it said 1964 Austin Cooper. That was the first time I knew that this was a 64, and that I knew that well, I saw the logo, so I knew that it was an Austin Cooper, but I didn't know what year. And so typically when we go see our family on the East Coast, it's an 18, 19-hour drive for us. So I had an 18-hour captive audience with my wife on the way home after New Year's, and I told her, I said, "Hey, you know, I have that beautiful car in the garage that I rarely drive. If I sell that car, can I make an offer on this Mini?" Well, it wasn't a hard sell. She said, "Yeah, but you have to sell the car." She complains that we have too many cars. So here it is, September 2018. I'm fortunate enough to have a 64 Cooper, and I still have a car for sale. It hasn't sold as quickly as I want, but it'll sell. So here we are. Let's see. So part of the story is, I think it really involves my daughter, because the wife, she was just as excited about cars as he was. And one of the stories that she told us was about one summer they had a 16-year-old girl who was homeschooled, and their parents wanted her to learn a little bit about a car. And so they had them work with this couple. They had their daughter work with this couple to learn about cars. And so I told them about my daughter and how she prefers the classics over all the bells and whistles of everything new. And they were kind of intrigued by that. And I showed them pictures of Waverly and I working on our cars. And well, I believe, I don't know for sure, I believe that helped them make the decision to allow me to buy the car from them, because I learned later that they did have other offers on this car and they didn't sell for whatever reason. I think they felt like the buyer wasn't the right person. Well, thankfully for us, they felt comfortable with us, and they allowed us to take this puppy home. Now I realize that there's a lot of aftermarket items on this car, and I actually believe that this is an American market car. I have to do a little bit more research to determine that, but maybe some people out there can help me when I start showing pictures. But like here, for example, I think in the 1970s, it was a popular thing to de-seam them. Like they got rid of the bumpers and they made it all nice and seamless. There's no bumpers on this car. There's an aftermarket steering wheel. I think there's aftermarket wheels. A lot of aftermarket stuff, and I can recognize some of it. The wheels, they say made in England, but I don't really know what type or kind they are. All in all, beautiful car. The people that own this, how the people that I bought it from came onto it, was that they had a friend who was a landlord. Well, one of their renters owed back rent, and then they just up and left town, leaving this car. So the landlord ended up with this car, and they really didn't care anything much about it. So one thing led to another. I guess through legalities, they ended up taking ownership of it, and they sold it to the couple who I bought it from. Now, they bought it from the landlord in January of 1989. I do know that they drove it around a little bit, but I don't know how long it's been dry stored. I have a feeling it's been dry stored for quite some time. All in all, it's in really good shape. Yeah, it has a massive hole right in the driver's floorboard, but the boot and all the metal back there, I think it's the original seals. A lot of the metal looks a whole lot, let me just say, for a 64, it looks a whole lot better than the 82 Mini that I purchased and had shipped over from England. But I'm not going to touch it until I learn a little bit of skill on the existing Mini. But This is my American barn find, and I am quite excited about it. My brother-in-law helped me load it up so I could pull it home. My brother-in-law has been quite an inspiration to me. He also, while we were there, he told him the story about his restoration. He restored a 1968 Chevy truck, and it's a beautiful truck. And I'll post some videos on that. But he is a huge inspiration for me. So I'm hoping this guy's going to sit right here. I realize I am starting to purchase parts for it. Now, a neat story is I have a hard time buying stuff from England. Mostly on eBay, and that's because people either they won't ship to the U.S. or if it's a big ticket item like a car, they think I'm trying to scam them. I had a heck of a time buying my first Mini because a lot of people in the UK just won't ship, and I get it. You know, there are scammers out there, so I understand that. Of course, I'm not one of them, and so it makes it hard for me. The steering wheel, the guy wouldn't ship to the U.S. And so I had a friend coming over, and so I asked him, said, hey, if I ship the steering wheel to you, will you bring it with you? And it all worked out beautiful. The steering wheel is almost mint. It's an Austin steering wheel with a beautiful mint crest, Austin crest. And so I am starting to buy parts for it, and I'll continue to do that as time goes on. But I won't touch her until I've learned some skill. She'll sit all dried. You know, I may move her around the garage from time to time. But this is my American barn find. I realize it's not typical British, but I'm just as excited about it. And I actually have a 1964 Austin Cooper. So thank you for watching. And hopefully the next video you'll see will be an actual restoration video. But hey guys, thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye now.
Oh, we got the seats. I was younger when I put those up there. Look at that blank spot. I can hang something on the wall. Oh, I know, like the other seats. Okay. Yeah. Okay, how about lunch? I'll view up here too, and I'll take a quick picture. We keep files on these things in case the FBI comes by.
Glimmer girl, wait.
Who knows?